What's up, Trojan family? Welcome to the USC LAFB show. I'm your host, Ryan Doward, with the latest recruiting updates for all your USC Trojans. Hope everyone had a fantastic weekend. Little cold, little chilly today again in the Southland. USC resumes spring practices today, Tuesday, as of this recording. And a lot of big recruits are going to be on campus this week. So I wanted to provide a quick update on who is reportedly going to be there. We will be out there tonight as well as Thursday. Myself and Tim Tim Prangley, the great Tim Prangley, running our call-in show, which will be tomorrow evening, Wednesday evening, live call-in show. Missed it last week for anyone looking. Tim got really sick, couldn't talk. Hard to do a call-in show when you can't talk. And I was up in Yosemite camping, so took the week off on that. But I'll be back tomorrow night, and then we will be on campus on Thursday. So I'll have another one of these updates probably Friday morning for all of you. So I want to talk a little bit about who's going to be on campus, a little bit about Tomuhini Topui, a little recruiting update for those that haven't heard, probably have heard by now, and then a little Ryder Lions update, gossip, whatever you want to call it. We'll kind of get into that. And love to hear you guys' thoughts. I always love all the comments. Sorry, I didn't get to many last. It's just been busy since getting back from camping. But I do try to read all of them, and I want to do better about responding to them. So thank you always for leaving the comments and the engagement. If you have not already, please hit that like and subscribe button on our USC LAFB YouTube channel. You can find all of our USC content, video, audio, and all of my written work on LAFBnetwork.com. If you prefer to just listen to audio in the car, just search Salute to Troy, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. So let's start really quick. Tomuhini Topui, the great 4-star monster defensive tackle that flipped from Oregon to USC, just announced, I want to say it was like Sunday, that he is shutting down his recruitment. Done deal. Now, we're still many months away from signing day. So the way the college world works, I never rule anything out. Things can happen. But shutting down recruitment, canceling all visits. He had an official visit, I believe, scheduled for like Miami in June. Obviously, the Oregon stuff was canceled since he flipped. But all visits have canceled, locked in with USC. So, crazy things can happen. Coaches are still going to call, as they should, for a top recruit. But by shutting down your recruitment, not outwardly looking, not visiting, that's a huge deal. Remember we talked about it before. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm disparaging on the kid, but, when Julian Lewis was committed here, 70 visits he took during his recruiting. 70. I think it was like 27 or something after committing to USC. So that tells you they're really not locked in. They've committed, but when a recruit continues taking visits, and anytime you get on someone's campus, I've said, that's the huge opportunity to flip someone, because that's when you're in person, you're building relationships, you're seeing other recruits that are in the class, you're seeing the team, the facilities, sitting down with the coaches. That's huge. I think this is just a huge deal that Topui is shutting down his recruitment. Locked in with SC as of now, April 15th. So big news there. As far as visits this week, another monster week for USC. Our good friend Scott Schrader of On3 has posted kind of his visitor list, who he has heard. Some of these I have heard as well. And, when we get to campus, we can obviously verify more of these. I don't know if I'll read this entire list because it is a lot. But just today, the 15th, you got wide receiver Calvin Russell out of Florida. Offensive lineman out of Folsom, who just committed last week to USC, Vlad Diakonov. He will be there. You got linebacker Kenneth Goodwin out of Los Angeles. Tomorrow, tight end Luke Sorensen, who is a really underrated, I think, prospect out of Servite here locally in Southern California. So a kid I think that could certainly end up being a Trojan when it's said and done. On Thursday, the 17th, the big one on that day is linebacker Sean Scott. There's a lot of momentum picking up that he could end up committing to USC. And I think that, that will be a big and obviously be used as a linebacker, not as an edge, as many others potentially are recruiting him as. Defensive lineman Derek Coleman-Brussa out of Seattle, Washington, another big-time recruit, will be a big visit on Thursday as well. And then on the 19th, so Saturday, the weekend, will be the largest list, and some big ones here. I'll read a couple of them. Wide receiver James Scott out of Texas. Offensive lineman, big day for offensive linemen. You got Cannon Smith out of Denver, my hometown, Colorado. Kenny Pepe, this is a big one. From Southern California, goes to IMG Academy. He will certainly be one that the Trojans are hot on the recruitment trail, and I think would be a huge, one of the top offensive tackles, offensive linemen in this entire class. And Sam Utu out of Orange Lutheran, the other offensive lineman that I think is trending big for USC. But obviously want to get him to come in. If they can get him locked in, before the end of the month, that's big as they kind of near those official visits in June. So there's more others. I won't read every single name, but those are kind of the big ones this week visiting. So, USC continues to just knock it out of the park with these visits and glowing reviews from all the recruits, from the families that be there. And so this coaching staff has just done a fantastic job in, getting this current team ready for the season, for the summer program, for the fall. And then also, showcasing the program and what they're trying to accomplish to this new incoming recruiting class to kind of get in and get excited. And by doing all these visits too, because Chad Bowden's talked about this, Chad Savage has talked about this, Lincoln Riley's talked about this, but most recently, Chad Bowden mentioned it, is like, you want these recruits to get to know each other and build that family bond, and that is a huge way to get them from flipping. Remember, these are 17, 16-year-old kids. And in this world of NIL, getting thrown money around all over, but as long as the NIL is comparable, if they've built relationships with the other members of their class, they see them on campus all the time, you wouldn't want to leave. You're like, well, I'm sure I can make a few extra bucks somewhere else, but like I know all these dudes. I want to play with them. I don't want to go somewhere brand new. So even though they won't even be on campus till next year, by visiting often, getting these kids around each other often, you're already building friendships and relationships. Think of like when you were a kid and you go to summer camp, right? How many great friends have we all made at summer camp? And, I don't know how many people went to summer camp in high school. Obviously, there's like sports camps you went to. But you think as a kid, you went to summer camp for a week, sometimes a month, and you build those relationships, and sometimes those last a lifetime. So I'm not saying that's the end-all, be-all, that kids aren't going to decommit or flip, but it's a huge factor and a huge tool to use for this coaching staff, for Chad Bowden and his staff, to just really fortify this class and keep them home, because they're all in it together then. You don't feel like isolated. And especially when you're a local Cali kid and you see each other all the time. You play against each other. You're on campus together. You're going to the Collie for games on visits. It just makes it that much easier building that. So another big week. We'll see if we get any of these guys towards the end of the week, any more commitments as they're nearing that goal of 35 commits. All right, lastly, Ryder Lyons. This is going to be a fascinating end of his recruitment. He has said that he plans to commit this summer, wants to be done committed by the summer, so then once the fall comes, he can focus on his senior year of football at Folsom, and who knows if that means he'll take visits during the fall or whatnot, but he wants to at least have the commitment part done with. And since I can remember, a year and a half ago, USC has always been the favorite. Obviously, I've said many times, everyone knows his brother, Walker Lyons, is the tight end at USC. Lincoln Riley has been up to Folsom many times to visit, and, we know when you're a quarterback, Lincoln Riley is always going to get one of the top guys. Just resume speaks for itself. Whatever you think about him as a full head coach, like, There's no denying he's the best head coach for quarterbacks in college football. It's not my opinion. It's just a fact. Just look at that. Just look how it is, right? So, they've been the front runner since, his recruiting started. Adam Gorney, one of the recruiting insiders for Rivals, kind of put out some intel on his recruitment or what he's heard. Lions just finished a visit to Ole Miss. And Ole Miss, ironically, actually just got a commitment yesterday in the 26th class. But it's a 3-star. Nothing against 3 stars, but they did get one. But Gorney said Ole Miss will be a finalist. There's a great connection with Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is, if Lincoln Riley is like the top QB coach in college football, Lane Kiffin, you could argue, is the best in the SEC. It's just pure quarterback development in his history. So there's a good relationship there. He also threw out Michigan and Ohio State as big contenders for him. Ohio State, obviously, just being Ohio State, seeing the class they always put together, being the defending national champions. And then Michigan, he mentioned that Ryder Lyons likes the idea of being able to kind of sit behind Bryce Underwood, the number 1 quarterback in the 25 class, for potentially a year, and then take over after that. So Michigan, I think, is really in the fold. And then obviously Oregon is the other big one. Oregon is really, it's going to be fascinating because Jared Curtis, who's making he's the number 1 QB in the 26 class, I believe, by most of the recruiting websites. So he will be making his decision between Georgia and Oregon at the end of this month, April. If he decides Oregon, then I think they're probably out on Ryder Lions. If he decides Georgia, then Oregon is going to be going all in on Lions. Because remember, they lost Jonas Williams to USC. They already had Williams committed. He flipped to SC. So then they kind of have gone all in on Curtis. And they've been on all of them, but then they kind of gone all in on Curtis and Lions. But based on everything we've heard, they're more in on Curtis. More in sounds, but they've kind of pushed their chips to Curtis, and whatever he decides, then they'll push to Lions. Now, I don't know if Lions maybe sees that as like, all right, well, if you're waiting on that, then I'm going to go elsewhere. The final school that I think is really has a viable shot is BYU. Obviously based on his, faith and background, and he will go on a mission after this year. BYU is maybe seen by many as a lesser school, which they're not the perennial power of USC, Oregon, Georgia, all these guys. But, Zach Wilson was just taken 2nd overall out of BYU. Not too long ago. Now, he hasn't panned out in the NFL, but he was the 2nd overall quarterback taken in his draft class. And BYU has put together, especially now that they're in the Big 12, is a program that it's not just like a smaller, whatever they call them now. Now it's not. It's Power 4, going to be Power 5 again when the Pac-12 is back, but, not a lesser Mountain West school anymore. They're in the Big 12. They were really good in the Big 12 last year. Dominated Colorado. So I think BYU is a bigger contender than people think. Now, Gorney said in his piece, and I wrote about it on LAFBnetwork.com, that once Jonas Williams flipped to USC, and I don't have the quote in front of me, I should have had it in front of me, but I'll paraphrase. Once Williams flipped to SC, Ryder Lyons still went on his visits to SC, but that ship may have sailed, was his I'm paraphrasing, but his words. Basically meaning because of Williams being here, Lions will look elsewhere. And it's a really kind of interesting point because there's part of it, and we've all said this, he's essentially going to be a 27. Yeah, he's the 26 class commitment, but he won't be on campus till 2027. And so most schools, not all of them, but a good amount, will take a quarterback every class just because you don't know if one's going to flip. You don't know what the development's going to look like. And so you try to take a quarterback almost every class. Sometimes you'll skip 1 year depending how much youth you have. So if he were to commit to SC, technically, you have Longstreet 25, Williams 26, Lions 27. And so the progression would kind of go, you hope Longstreet takes over the reins in 26 when Williams is a true freshman. But you remember, you got 3 years. So this is where it gets kind of murky. 3 years so you can go to the pros. So if Longstreet does, let's say Mayava has a great year this year, wins starting job, he ends up going to the draft after this year. Longstreet takes over in 26 as a true sophomore or a redshirt freshman. And Jonas Williams would then be a true freshman. So Longstreet would still need 2 years before he can go to the draft. So let's say he plays 26, and then 27 when Lyons gets to campus then. Longstreet would be in he still have plenty of eligibility, but he'd be in his final year needed before going to the draft. So let's say Lyons then is the starter, or Longstreet is the starter in 27. So that means Williams will have sat 2 years. And then you go into 28, where Lyons would probably be a redshirt freshman, and Williams would be a redshirt sophomore. Both have plenty of eligibility to get enough playing time to showcase their talent, to obviously hopefully lead SC to national championships and go on to the draft. So the timeline still works, but the question is, and you can never plan for this. Like, who knows? Maybe Williams doesn't reach the level that they want and Lyons becomes in and beats us out. But I'm just saying, when you think kind of that way, especially as a player in this NIL era, again, this isn't the Pete Carroll era, right? You're not having Matt Castle and Mark Sanchez and Matt Leinart all on the same roster, or John David Booty, and Leinart was obviously before that, but you're not having all these guys on the same roster. So the idea of like, okay, to see Longstreet through, as we hope to be great, Williams is going to have to sit basically 2 years. And so that third year in 28, like, that's his year to take over after sitting that long, or else he's transferring. So then with Lyons want to sit 2 years, coming back from his mission, sit a year while Longstreet is still the starter, and then sit another year while Williams takes over. And then who knows if Williams wants to stay 2 years. So I'm just putting this all out there that I still think USC is a true frontrunner because of Lincoln Riley, because of his brother being there, because of the California connection. So no way do I think they're out. But it does get murky when you think about it like that, because it's not just, he's 27. He's a 27 quarterback. So, it's bang, 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 one every year. But in reality, he could potentially not start till 29. Whereas if he were to go to an Ole Miss or a Michigan, and these things can change, obviously, or an Oregon, potentially he starts in 27, day one, or sits 1 year and starts in 28. So you never plan for that. If you're SC, you still go all out and try to get the kid, and get him to commit, because you don't know how things are going to play out. You don't know if one of these quarterbacks is going to transfer. I mean, you can't, there's no Pete Carroll years where, like, cool, this guy commits, we basically got him for 5 years, 4 years minimum, 3 years minimum, I guess. But if they're not playing, 4 years, because they got to, 4 or 5, they got to showcase they're going to go to the NFL. Unless you're Matt Castle, didn't play and still got drafted. So it's going to be really interesting. I felt a few months ago that he was still pretty much a lock for SC. I don't think anything has changed in terms of like what I'm hearing, or that another school stands out more. I just think, for me personally, the more I kind of process what the starting lineage is going to look like at SC, the more I'm like, it actually may not be as much of a lock as I kind of felt, simply for that reason. Nothing because of SC's doing, and so that we'll see. And for those saying, so did them getting Jonas Williams kind of screw up getting Ryder Lyons? I mean, you could argue that, but I think what everyone hopefully realizes is Jonas Williams is a really good quarterback, and he's got a ton of talent, ton of athleticism. I think his ranking is lower than it should be. So when it comes to quarterbacks, I'm going to trust Lincoln Riley wholeheartedly, whoever he wants to go get, especially in recruiting. But anyway, let me know, you guys. I'm just so curious what you guys think, because I'm not at all saying that he's going elsewhere. I just feel, just again, not based on what I've heard. This is more just my opinion, processing kind of like how these years line up. That it does make a little, if you're his parents and if you're just him that wants to play, and hopefully the competitor in him is like, well, I'll just get there in 27 and I'll beat Williams out or Longstreet out. Like, I'm that good. Like, you hope that's the thought process. But we've seen more and more, especially in this day and age of football, that a lot of these kids, and I'm not saying Ryder Lyons has said this or done this, but just the last few years have shown us that kids are like, I want to go somewhere where is the most open for me to start right now. And I don't have to, again, not that they're afraid of competition. I'm not saying that. And again, certainly not saying about that, about Ryder Lyons. But if you have a path of like, okay, I'm basically the incumbent when I get there, or I have two young guys still in front of me when I get there, it might lead you down a different path. I still think it'd be, I mean, if he comes here, they have the QB position locked till 2030. And that helps with NIL because you got those locked down. You can recruit kind of then more strategically with other positions. I mean, potentially even past 2030. So those are just my thoughts. I'm kind of just like thinking out loud. Let me know what you guys think. Drop it in the comments. Big recruiting week for USC at spring practices. I mentioned all the names going to be there. We'll let you know any update if any surprise visitors. Tomuhini Topui shutting down his recruitment, locked into SC. And then, yeah, let me know your thoughts on Ryder Lyons and just kind of what you think his process and his recruiting cycle is going to look like over the next kind of few months. And he'll be back on campus, especially for an official visit in June, I believe. I think June 6th or like June 17th, he'll be, it can change, but he'll be here in June. So big one for him to be at, because that's a big month for SC. So thank you all for now with me. As always, this is the USC LAFB show on the LAFB network. Please hit that like and subscribe button on the USC LAFB channel if you have not already. If you're on audio, Salute to Troy is how you can find us on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And all of our USC Trojans content can be found at LAFBnetwork.com. Everyone have a great few days. We'll be back again, call-in show Wednesday night live on the USC LAFB channel. And I'll be back on Friday with an update after Thursday's practice. Everyone be well. Thank you so much. And as always, fight on.